She slapped me, and that night I served her dinner. I never thought the sound that would break my heart the most would be the sharp echo of a slap inside my own home. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic, but it was enough to silence my soul. I am an old woman. My hands shake when I hold a glass of water. My knees ache when I stand for too long. And that day, when my daughter-in-law's palm struck my face, I did not scream, I did not cry. I just stood there, stunned, feeling something far deeper than pain. It was the realization that respect can die quietly, even among family. My name is Kamala Rao. I am 62 years old. I am a widow. And this is the story of how dignity, patience, and justice crossed paths in the most unexpected way. That morning started like any other. I woke up before sunrise, as I always did. Old habits don't leave you, even after retirement. Even after loneliness becomes routine. I cleaned the house slowly, whispering prayers under my breath, making sure the kitchen was spotless before anyone else woke up. My son Arjun was a good man. He worked hard as a software engineer. He barely had time to breathe. He left home early and returned late, exhausted but kind. He always touched my feet before leaving for work. That gesture alone kept me alive inside. His wife, Naina, was different. Not bad, just sharp, modern, confident. She spoke quickly, walked quickly, judged quickly. When Arjun married her 3 years ago, I welcomed her with open arms. I truly did. I thought love and time would soften everything. But time doesn't always heal. Sometimes it exposes. Naina didn't like the way I cooked. Too oily. Too simple. She didn't like the way I folded clothes. Too old-fashioned. She didn't like that I prayed every evening. Too traditional. I tried to adjust. I really did. I stopped using spices she didn't like. I changed my prayer time so it wouldn't disturb her TV shows. I stayed quiet when she spoke harshly. I told myself, she is young. She is stressed. She will understand one day. That day, the argument was about something small. Always small things turn into big wounds. I had moved a file from the dining table to the cupboard while cleaning. I didn't know it was important. When Naina came out of the bedroom and didn't find it, her face changed. "Where is my file?" she asked, not looking at me. "I kept it safely in the cupboard," I said softly. Her eyes burned. "Who told you to touch my things?" she snapped. "I was just cleaning," I replied. "I didn't want." Before I could finish, she walked toward me fast. "You think this is your house?" she shouted. "Stop interfering in my life." Then it happened. Her hand came up, and it came down on my face. The sound echoed. Time froze. My cheek burned, but my heart burned more. She stood there, breathing heavily, eyes wide, as if she herself couldn't believe what she had done. I didn't raise my hand. I didn't shout. I didn't curse her. I just looked at her. And that silence scared her more than any scream. She stormed back into her room and slammed the door. I went into the bathroom, locked it, and stared at myself in the mirror. A red mark bloomed on my cheek, but the deeper mark was inside. I thought of my husband. How he never once raised his voice at me. I thought of my parents, who taught me that self-respect is everything. I thought of my son, who had no idea what just happened in his home. That night, I cooked dinner. Rice, lentils, vegetables. Simple food. Warm food. I set the table carefully. 3 plates, 3 glasses. Just like every day. When Arjun came home, he was tired. He smiled at me unaware. "Smells nice, Ma," he said. Naina came out of the room. She didn't look at me. We sat down to eat. I served her first. My hands didn't shake. She looked up at me, confused. I said nothing. The slap stayed between us, invisible but heavy. That night, I barely slept. Not because of anger, but because of a question. How long can patience stay silent before it becomes injustice to oneself? Days passed. Naina acted normal, as if nothing had happened, as if that slap never existed. But I changed. I stopped adjusting. I stopped shrinking. I spoke less, observed more. I started writing everything down. Dates, words, actions. Not out of revenge, out of clarity. One evening, Arjun noticed the bruise. "What happened to your face?" he asked, alarmed. I smiled gently. "Old skin bruises easily," I said. He didn't push. But the house felt heavier after that. Naina's behavior worsened. She insulted me in front of guests. She mocked my education. She complained to Arjun about me constantly. And slowly, Without realizing it, Arjun started believing her. That hurt more than the slap. One night I overheard Naina on the phone. "She's pretending to be innocent," she said. "One day I'll make sure she leaves this house." That was the night I decided something important. I would not fight with anger. I would fight with truth. I went to a lawyer, a calm woman with kind eyes. I told her everything. I showed her my notes. I showed her recordings. I had never planned to record anyone, but sometimes survival teaches you things. The lawyer listened quietly. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want dignity," I said. "And I want my son to know the truth." The plan was slow, careful, legal. One evening, I invited Arjun and Naina to sit with me. "I want to talk," I said. Naina rolled her eyes. Arjun looked nervous. I played the recordings. Her words filled the room, her insults, her threats, her confession of the slap. Arjun's face went pale. Naina stood up, screaming, denying, blaming. But truth has a sound, and it is clear. Arjun cried that night, not loudly, like a broken child. "I didn't know," he kept saying. I held his hand. "I know," I said. "That's why this hurts." Naina left the house that night. There was no shouting, no police, no drama, just consequences. Weeks later, she tried to apologize, tried to justify, tried to manipulate. I forgave her. But forgiveness does not mean allowing harm again. Arjun filed for separation. People judged me. They said I broke a family. They said I should have stayed quiet. But silence is not always virtue. Sometimes silence teaches abusers that they are right. Today, I live peacefully. Arjun visits me every day. He cooks for me now. He listens. Sometimes he asks, "Ma, how did you stay calm after she slapped you?" I smile. Because anger gives power to the wrong person. I say, patience gives power to the right moment. That night when I served her dinner, it was not weakness. It was strength waiting for justice. And justice came. Not loudly, but firmly. The lesson is simple yet heavy. Respect is not demanded, it is required. And no matter how old you are, or how weak you seem, your dignity is never negotiable. Months passed, but the silence in the house was no longer heavy. It was calm. The kind of calm that comes after a storm has destroyed what was weak and left behind what was real. Arjun changed in ways I never expected. He became quieter, more thoughtful. Sometimes I would catch him staring at nothing, guilt written all over his face. One evening, as we sat on the balcony watching the sky turn orange, he finally spoke. "Ma, why didn't you tell me earlier?" I took a long breath. The question had been waiting for weeks. "Because I didn't want to turn your marriage into a battlefield," I said. "And because I needed to be sure that when you knew the truth, you would be strong enough to face it." He looked down, ashamed. "I failed you." I held his hand, the same hand I once held when he learned to walk. "No," I said softly. "You learned. Failure is when you never learn." Life moved forward. I started volunteering at a small community center, teaching basic reading and writing to women my age, women who had stories heavier than mine, women who had stayed silent for decades. One day, during class, a woman asked me, "Aren't you scared of being alone?" I smiled. "I was lonelier when I had no respect," I replied. News travels fast in society. Some praised me quietly. Some criticized me loudly. But I had made peace with that. You cannot please everyone when you choose truth. Then, one afternoon, Naina came back. She stood at the door, thinner, eyes tired. Gone was the sharp confidence. In its place was something fragile. "I just want to talk," she said. I invited her in. She cried. She apologized. She spoke about stress, insecurity, fear of losing control. She admitted the slap was unforgivable. I listened. When she finished, I said something she didn't expect. "I forgive you," I said. "But forgiveness does not erase responsibility." She nodded, tears falling. "I am rebuilding my life," I continued. "And so are you. We do that separately." She left peacefully. That was the last time I saw her. Years later, Arjun remarried. Slowly, this time with understanding, not blindness. His wife Mira touched my feet the first day she entered the house, not out of tradition, but out of respect. I stopped her gently. "Don't bow," I said. "Just walk beside me." Sometimes, late at night, I still remember that slap. Not with pain, but with clarity. It reminds me that morality is not about staying quiet forever. Justice is not about revenge. And strength is not always loud. That night, when I served her dinner, I wasn't submitting. I was choosing my moment, and that choice gave me my life back. As years passed, I realized something important. People remember the slap, but they forget what comes after. What comes after is where real character is built. Mira slowly became part of the house, not by force, not by rules, but by empathy. She asked before changing things. She listened before judging. And when she made mistakes, she apologized without ego. One evening, while helping me fold clothes, she suddenly said, "Ma, why do people hurt the ones who are kind to them?" I paused. "Because kindness is often mistaken for weakness," I replied, "and insecure people try to feel powerful by hurting what is gentle." She nodded, her eyes thoughtful. That night, I couldn't sleep. Memories came back, not painfully, but like old photographs. I remembered the woman I used to be, always adjusting, always excusing bad behavior in the name of family. I wished someone had told me earlier that patience without boundaries slowly becomes self-destruction. One day, at the community center, a young woman approached me after class. Her hands were shaking. "My mother-in-law insults me every day," she whispered. "Everyone says I should tolerate it." I looked at her carefully and said, "Tolerating pain does not make you noble. It only teaches others that your pain does not matter." She cried. I realized then that my story was no longer just mine. It had become a lesson. Arjun often tells people, "My mother taught me what strength looks like." But the truth is, strength was always there. I just stopped hiding it behind silence. On my 65th birthday, Arjun organized a small gathering. Friends, neighbors, women from the center. Laughter filled the house. At one point, Arjun raised a glass and said, "To the woman who taught me that justice does not need shouting, and dignity does not need permission." Everyone clapped. I didn't feel proud. I felt peaceful. Later that night, alone in my room, I whispered a prayer. Not of gratitude for happiness, but of gratitude for courage. Because morality is not about enduring everything quietly, and justice is not about hurting back. Justice is about knowing your worth, standing firm in truth, and allowing consequences to teach what words cannot. That slap did not define me. What I did after it did. And that is the story I will carry with me until my last breath. Time continued its quiet march, the way it always does, indifferent to pain, faithful to healing. My hair turned whiter. My steps became slower. But inside, I felt lighter than I had in years. Sometimes, when I sat alone by the window in the early mornings, watching the street wake up, I would think about how close I had come to losing myself completely. Not because of the slap alone, but because of everything I had accepted before it. Disrespect rarely begins with violence. It begins with words, with dismissive looks, with being ignored. The slap was only the final sentence in a long paragraph I had allowed to be written. One afternoon, a letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Naina. I hesitated before opening it. Then I reminded myself I was no longer afraid of the past. The letter was simple. No excuses. No accusations. She wrote that she was in therapy, that she had lost many people after leaving our house, that she finally understood that power without empathy is cruelty, and that the slap haunted her more than it ever haunted me. At the end, she wrote, "I don't expect forgiveness again. I just wanted you to know that your silence that night changed me more than your anger ever could have." I folded the letter and placed it in my drawer, not as a victory, as closure. That night, Arjun asked me, "Do you ever regret not reacting that day?" I thought for a long time. "No," I said, "because reacting would have been easy. Responding with wisdom was harder." He nodded slowly. Life did not become perfect. It never does. There were still disagreements, still misunderstandings, still moments of loneliness. But there was also honesty, and respect, and the courage to speak when silence was no longer virtue. As I grow older, people often ask me for advice. I always tell them the same thing. Be patient, but do not disappear. Be kind, but do not allow cruelty. Forgive, but never forget your worth. That night, when my daughter-in-law slapped me and I served her dinner, I wasn't choosing weakness. I was choosing dignity over impulse, truth over noise, justice over revenge, and sometimes That is the bravest choice a human being can make. This is not just my story. It is for anyone who thinks staying silent is the only way to keep peace. Peace without respect is not peace at all. In the quiet years that followed, I began to understand something deeper. Justice does not always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it comes like rain, slowly, softly, changing the soil before anyone notices. My health declined a little with age. Hospital visits became more frequent. Arjun insisted I move closer to his workplace, but I refused. "This house holds my truth," I said. "I will stay where I stood up for myself." During one hospital stay, a nurse asked me gently, "Your son takes such good care of you. Was he always like this?" I smiled faintly. "He became this man the day he learned that love without respect is incomplete." One evening, while recovering at home, Mira sat beside me and said something that stayed with me. "I was scared when I married into this family," she admitted. "But when I heard what you went through, I realized something. This house is safe because truth lives here." That was the moment I knew the cycle had truly broken. No shouting, no fear, no silent suffering passed down like inheritance. Sometimes I imagine another version of my life, one where I had screamed that day, where I had slapped back, where anger had ruled the moment. Maybe it would have felt good for a second, but it would not have changed hearts. It would not have taught accountability. It would not have protected my future. What protected me was patience paired with courage. On my 70th birthday, the women from the community center surprised me with a small book. Inside were their stories, each one different, yet painfully similar. On the first page they had written, "You taught us that silence is a choice, and so is self-respect." I cried then, not from sadness, from meaning. As my days grow quieter, I no longer fear the end, because I know I lived honestly. I know I did not trade my dignity for temporary peace. That slap was a moment. What followed was a lifetime lesson. And if someone listening to my story finds the courage to speak, to stand, or to walk away from disrespect, then every tear I swallowed was worth it, because morality is not about suffering endlessly. Justice is not about destroying others. It is about choosing yourself, even when your voice shakes. And once you do that, no one can ever truly harm you again. As my body slowed, my thoughts became clearer. I began writing at night, not a diary, not complaints, just memories. Truth as I remembered it. I wrote about my childhood, my marriage, my mistakes, my silence, and the moment everything changed. I didn't know why I was writing. Maybe I wanted to leave something behind that was honest. One night, Arjun found the notebook. He didn't read it secretly. He asked, "Ma, may I?" I nodded. He read for hours. When he finished, his eyes were red. "I never knew how much you carried," he said. "That's because I never showed it," I replied. He held my hand tightly, as if afraid time might take me away sooner than expected. "I promise," he said quietly. "This house will never forget what you taught us." Not long after, my health worsened. Doctors used gentle words, the kind that prepare you without saying goodbye out loud. I wasn't afraid. On one calm evening, I asked Arjun and Mira to sit with me. "If one day I am not here," I said, "remember this. Protect respect first. Love survives only when dignity is safe." They both cried. I smiled. The next morning, sunlight filled my room. I felt tired, but peaceful. I thought about that night again. The slap, the dinner, the silence. I realized something that surprised even me. I was grateful for that moment, not for the pain, but for the awakening. It forced me to see myself clearly. It forced my son to grow. It stopped a cycle that could have harmed generations. If injustice had never crossed my path, courage might never have been born. As my breathing slowed, I whispered a final prayer. Not for myself. For every person who feels small in their own home. For every soul taught that endurance is love. For every heart waiting for permission to choose itself. When I was gone, Arjun placed my notebook in the community center library. Women still read it. Some cry, some grow quiet, some stand taller. And every time someone finds the strength to say, "Enough," my story continues. Because morality lives in choices, justice lives in timing, and dignity, once claimed, never dies.